how do you access the content world if you yourself don't have reliable internet or technology to do so? Now, this is a topic I've been thinking about over the last month because a friend of mine had to move back to her country across the world, and the internet access there is pretty shoddy at best, if like really in most cases not good at all. And I have another friend in another country where the internet is basically like the 1990s dial up, and you essentially don't have access to the high speed internet that most content creators would have access to. And that also includes the tools that you need to use in order to be a content creator. Like right now, I'm using Meld Studio. It's probably only a US based tool, and yet it's one of the better recording slash streaming softwares. And so I find that this idea has been fascinating and has been kind of swirling around in my head. And I wanted to provide you just some resources and ideas on how you could go about creating content, even if you don't necessarily have consistent access to internet, because sometimes maybe you have to go to a coffee shop to upload, right? Or maybe like an internet hub, internet building. I don't know what they're called in a lot of countries, but there's usually like internet cafe, something like that. So whether you are able to create videos or not, that's okay. Podcasts might be more viable because then you can still talk, but the bandwidth needed for podcasts is a lot less than videos. And maybe if you can't do either one of those, you can only do written content, and that's okay. What I always try to encourage people to do is more and more. And I tell people the modern content creator does all three types. But you don't necessarily have to make videos in order to do that type. And we'll get into that here in a moment. And so I'm going to try to give you a step-by-step progression on how you can go ahead and make all three content types, starting with written, then audio, then video, and how you can go about turning into your content from one type into the other. So in case you need to go ahead and do it. And I'm just going to try to give some ideas on how you can access the internet and post your stuff when you have limited access and still make content even when you don't have access. So first and foremost, I think the biggest thing you need to think about is a knowledge management tool. So I use Obsidian, which is a local app. It is on the computer, and that's it. You can sync it in the cloud, but I had issues with my database actually syncing because I have too many notes. But I think if you have a very small actual vault, it should be okay. But depending on how many ideas you have and how much note taking you're doing when you're learning, that can make a big difference on if Obsidian is the right tool for you. But it's really nice because it allows you to keep track of all your content ideas, have calendars and stuff like that. There is also Notion, which is a cloud-based tool. And so if you do have somewhat consistent access to the internet, maybe not high speed, but you have access, Notion does have an offline version. So at least if you do lose connection, the offline version will take over, I think, ideally. And so you can access the cloud, write your post on there, or share your post to Notion, and then have it synced up in the cloud. So that way, if your computer is maybe old and slow, you at least have a backup. One thing I always try to tell content creators is always have a backup. Every time I make a blog post, I always copy it into my Obsidian vault. If I make a video, I copy the link at least. And so it's one of those things where you always want to have a backup in case your internet goes out or your website goes down. You have a backup of all your content. Now, what tools could you use besides a knowledge management tool to create content? Well, you would have a website hosting provider, and depending on the country you have and the regulations and the rules, you might have to use a VPN to get in and out of your country. I use a variety of different VPNs. Opera GX, actually, I think maybe a normal Opera, but Opera is a browser that actually has a VPN built into it, so that might be viable for a lot of people if it's accessible in your country. Again, all these tools that I mentioned and platforms may or may not be accessible in your country, but presumably if you use a VPN, you should be able to get access to the tool and download it anyways. Now, when you are starting out with content and you have poor internet, I would suggest doing written content. Even if it's not necessarily your medium of choice, you can always do voice to text. I'm sure your phone or your computer has a dictation tool allowing you to speak to your computer or your phone and allow it to write it out. Now, even if you're just creating content on your phone, you can actually generally write most posts using a Bluetooth keyboard or something like that and use your phone as the actual computer itself. But Substack is a great option. I am recording this video for my Substack as it is because it allows me to have some automations in place, and I want to get to that for people who are interested. But Substack allows you to have video audio and written content, as well as live streaming. So if you're maybe like a journalism person or a reporter for your country and you have internet access to do it, you could live stream something's going on in your country and have your Substack as your independent media. And that might be very powerful for a lot of people, such as what happened in Nepal recently and stuff like that. So that is an option for a lot of people. If you have the bandwidth for video, that might be a great way. Now, obviously, if you make video, you want to be on YouTube, right? Well, Substack has an automation that automatically sends that video over to YouTube. It also has an automation to take that video and turn it into a podcast. So I bring this up because even though Substack has had ups and downs in my case, I think that it's one of the only platforms for a lot of people that might be a worthwhile option. So let's say you have just enough internet to record a video, maybe not a live stream, but a video. Or if you do a live stream, it still kind of acts the same way on Substack. So you do a live stream or you do a video, you post it on there. It might take a while to upload, but you only have to upload once. And then in the back end, once you post it, it'll send it automatically for you using their servers. I think that's a very key point. You only have to upload once, and then it'll go to Substack, it'll go to YouTube, it'll go to your podcast platforms. Now, given regulations on how certain platforms are accessible in certain countries, that can make a big difference too. But if you use a VPN to, let's say, be in the US or maybe UK and have access to Spotify through that VPN and you set it up, then Substack is going to go ahead and route it for you anyways. And the same thing goes for social media management tools as well. If you can use something like Newlink, that might not be affordable for some people, but they probably have different pricing models depending on your region too. And there's other tools out there like Zapier and other automation feature-rich tools that allow you to take your posts and automatically share it to social media for you. So again, if you have limited access to internet, you can set up these automations ahead of time, allowing you to still be able to reach people a variety of different content environments, so written, audio, and video, even if you are not able to always access it yourself. So that's the point I wanted to make. I used Ghost CMS for my blog, and I find it to be a little bit more capable than Substack, but it doesn't have the automation for video and audio. It does have access to the Fediverse, and that means that like Mastodon and Blue Sky and stuff like that, you can have access to those platforms through Ghost, so you can automatically post to them. And then there's also the matter of, I think Ghost might be a better option for some people when it comes to hosting providing. Because let's say you can't use Substack or you don't want to use Substack and you want to have your own website on your own domain. Ghost is a very lightweight, it's JavaScript only tool, allowing you to actually have an email-based service on your own server. And there's plenty of other hosting providers, but I use Magic Pages. I think it's a very good host, and it's also in Europe. So I think base-wise, it might be more compatible for a lot of different regions. So keep that in mind. The region of the tool itself and the region of the hosting provider, those are all things you have to keep in mind when you are scattered around the world. Now, when you are writing, it makes it a lot easier to post because it's very, a few megabytes to upload. Shouldn't take too long, even on dial-up internet. But if you are doing like a podcast, that is going to be multiple. It's basically going to be double the size, file size, maybe even triple. And it's still not the greatest, but you can always compress it. You can always do things like just uploading it once a week and decrease the frequency if it takes a while to upload. And video is one of those things where, again, based on your internet access, I had quote unquote high-speed internet in my last apartment, and yet I had issues with it disconnecting all the time. In fact, even for like a week at a time, it would be gone. It had to do with the wiring of the building especially, and just having a crappy internet provider. But I was still technically high speed. Compared to what other people have to deal with, I had 300 megabytes per second compared to their 3 megabytes per second. So mine was a godsend compared to them. And I was struggling at uploading videos because it would take an hour for me to upload a video on that internet. So I understand that if you have 3 or 10 or 30 megabytes per second, that's very slow. And if that's all you can get, that might even be high speed in your area. I understand it could be a very difficult process. And so video would not be viable. However, what you could do is, while accessing the internet, using tools for text-to-speech, 11 Labs, or there's plenty of other similar tools, probably for different regions as well. I'm sure there's some sort of Indian copycat too. So maybe if you are in a region where 11 Labs is not available, although I think it's pretty global, then you could probably use one of those copycat tools in order to have access to something like that. And then there's also text-to-video generators too. Even OpusClip is coming out with one, and there's always like Lumen and like Lumen 5, I think is the tool. There's a lot of tools on the market that allow you to do text-to-video. And that might be a great way for you to make reels, for example. Maybe you can't make a full-length YouTube video, but you could make Instagram Instagram Reels, YouTube Shorts, and TikToks, and post them across all three because the videos are so small, but they're based off of your blog post already. And so you could take that same text to speech, make it into a podcast, and again, there should be ways of syndicating just through the website, which means their servers will take care of the uploading process for you. And like BeyondWords.io is what I use for a lot of my text to speech. And they have a podcast feed feature as a distribution tool. So all of my posts could then become a podcast feed. I don't use it for that, but if someone wanted to, they could. And there's also other avenues of just creating short form video content and stuff like that. So again, depends on your upload speed or download speed and your location and availability. But there are ways of getting around that, not just using a VPN, but even just using the company's servers to get to a place where you need to be. So it'll take a while to set up, but I think that if you are determined, you can go ahead and do it. And I would be really interested to see what people think. So please leave a comment down below, whether it's on YouTube or Substack or even on the podcast platforms. I'm really curious to see how you go ahead and do things. Are you a blogger? Are you a podcaster? Are you able to do videos even with slow internet speed? How do you do it? And maybe you're using because nowadays we have cloud-based internet websites, like so cloud-based editors, so you can actually go on the website and edit a video in the cloud. It'd be laggy because you still have to have access to the website itself, but you're not editing it on your computer. You are not uploading it on your computer. You are just editing the video on the website itself. So you could record in Descript, for example, and it'll be in the cloud. Granted, I think you are uploading as you're doing the process, so that could be slow, but you could record locally, have it upload in the backlog over the course of many hours, and then once it's finally uploaded, you can then have access to the editing features, but it's in the cloud. So you don't have to worry about having a powerful enough computer. You don't have to worry about trying to edit the video to upload later. And then from Descript, you should, I think, theoretically be able to upload to YouTube directly. Otherwise, it could be a little bit more difficult, but I know that I think Riverside has that feature and other tools do as well. So there are plenty of options. And this is something that I need to think about more, but I wanted to make this introductory video post about it because I think that there's a lot of opportunities for people around the world to create content, and I want to encourage you to do so. Thank you for your time.